Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Britton's Hangout Hour, episode 175. We made 175 of these. I am here today with Tomi Trembath. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty great, Britton. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, she runs two podcasts, I think. She runs
Yeah,
multiple podcasts. The one I watch is called Transcending Comics, which is where I found you. Um, but yeah, so glad to have you here. I'm glad we could put this together.
yeah, I've been looking forward to being on. I was excited to see your Morrisinathon since
Yes.
I kind of did one of those myself last year, preparing for my interview with Grant Morrison. I did in November of 2025. And then coming on for this show, I'm like, okay, I'd mostly moved on to other comics for my own comic book podcasts this year, but this gave me a good chance to go back and read some of the seminal works of Grant's that I didn't get a chance to last year. So this is a fun little diversion for me.
Yeah, she also writes comics as well. She wrote something called When We Transform, which I actually just read not too long before I got on here. 'Cause she sent me some of her comics, which was very nice. I liked it. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, that was something I was working on and I kickstarted back in 2024. It's in issue zero, I called it, rather than an issue one, just since it is a bit of a proof of concept or more of like, if I only get to write one comic, I want to get right to the thing I want to express in a story rather than starting from the beginning and having to kickstart who knows how many issues or find a publisher to get to that point. So I'm like, okay, I want to get to the queer part of a very Power Rangers Sentai inspired story. So here's
I was thinking
issue
like Power
zero.
Rangers or Ben 10, but I know you like the Power Rangers, so
Oh,
I
yeah.
guessed it was kind of an XP of the Power Rangers.
Hmm. I mean, we have a lot more we plan to do on in that world, and my main collaborator and co-writer on that, Jason Bryant, he's a huge Ben 10 fan. So, like, there is absolutely going to be Ben 10 inspiration in there as well.
Yeah, no, I didn't watch Ben 10 as much, but I have a friend who loves Ben 10, so you'd probably enjoy that.
Mm,
But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of a proof of concept because there was some stuff that was compressed, where like she just shows up and is like, "Hey, I know you're like mourning me over here, but I'm back. What's
yeah,
up?" And I'm like, and she's like, "What?" Yeah. Anyway,
mm,
won't get into that.
mm.
But my point being, I liked what I read, and it's like a proof of concept. It would be my guess.
Yeah, and like those first 6 pages before she shows up, that was its own like very condensed. Like, okay, I can only afford to make 6 pages of comics, and like Robert Kirkman even gives the advice of like before you try and make your magnum opus or try and make a whole issue, like write a 5 or a 6 pager because that's all a publisher's realistically gonna read if you send in a pitch. So I had
Mm-hmm.
to distill it down to like, how do I introduce someone to this world in 6 pages when I have like a whole season's worth of a TV show that I'm trying to express worth of like ideas.
Mm.
Uh, and then after that, like it was kind of on the back burner. And then I realized I was a woman and like had some major realizations over the following year and a half or so. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute, this might impact the direction I want to take this story. And so I then started to think out like, okay, I've introduced people to this world with 6 pages with a very terrifying cliffhanger. How do I now like how would I do a coming out conversation following up on where I set that up? So yeah, just it's been rounds of expanding a proof of con into what is now a full sized issue and working as a proof of concept on more than one level. Like the version you would have read, the digital one is just our standard edition of the comic, but we also did something that's kind of a first of its kind light reactive color changing comic. That's something I work with that I haven't really seen others do outside of a few blacklight comics, but like I discovered this color changing light reactive art style at a music festival where if you use RGB lights or like LED lights, you can have multiple designs in a single image or create like illusions of movement or transformation on a page. So we have a special edition we did just for the Kickstarter that has like 3 or 4 pages that react to color changing lights. We
Mm.
incorporate it in any moment where there's like the transformation sequence or this like otherworldly interdimensional space. And it's something, it's like a little slice of music festival culture I'm trying to bring to the world of comics
Mm.
and like the convention circuit. I take a whole color changing art pop up to a few conventions every year. So that's all kind of side stuff for me since none of that is even my day job.
Fair enough. I mean, I did watch your episode where you talked about kind of how you had this experience. I'll say it's like a Kathmandu, since
Mm.
we both found each other from Grant Morrison, but it was kind of maybe it's an exaggeration, but it was kind of like your Kathmandu situation where you were like, I seen everything,
I
Um,
have described it as my own personal Kathmandu experience many times, so I think that's a very apt comparison.
no, but that makes me wonder because I remember, and I'm just gonna say right now, if I like make you uncomfortable with what I'm gonna ask, you feel free to let me know. But I remember I remember I was in therapy for a while, and I asked my therapist one day, who has a trans child, and I'm like, so how does that work? And she kind of just sat back and gave it a thought, and she just kind of asked me, I'm like, well, do you feel like a dude? I just kind of was like, well, yeah. And she's like, well, there you go. And I was like, oh, okay. But like, that makes me curious. In your situation, you said you kind of figured out you were a woman. Like, was that always something that was in the background, or was that something that like this profound experience, you know, and you were just like, whoa, I see everything clearly now, or was it kind of a mix of both?
Yeah, it was a bit more the latter. I really needed a shock to my system to get there. To bring listeners up to speed, when I was 27 going on 28, I had my first psychedelic experience at a music festival. And if you've ever researched like psychedelic medicines or psychedelic experiences, I had a lot of the staples that you'll recognize from typical like acid trip or what they call an ego death, like a complete dissolution of like one sense of self. I witnessed or experienced my own death several times over the course of this trip, but also had a lot of like ecstatic, beautiful moments,
Mm.
like Grant Morrison's famous Kathmandu alien abduction experience. I had this sense that like everyone's the same person, which means you're every man and every woman. So you're also a woman. And like there was kind of a life review or like flashes of my life that came with that, that like there were these aspects of myself that had been very repressed that like I kind of touch on in my comic. Like say we see this character lingering in front of like a women's clothing store or just like
Hmm.
kind of fixated on a dress or something. That wasn't like the literal case for me, but there were just a lot of things that I thought like, okay, this, I don't know if this is like a fetish or something, but I'm not like getting off to this. It's
I don't mean to laugh.
something that makes me feel better or feel more comfortable, but it's like something I don't feel like I can tell people about because I'll get ripped to shreds for it. So like there were all these little signs, but it was not something that I'm like, I'm a woman and I can't tell anyone. Like I had even dated a couple trans women before this point, and the person that was kind of accompanying me on this experience did happen to be trans herself. And so like I there were a number of questions and I was apparently asking the right ones for them to know like, okay, this isn't like some creep that wants to just like I don't know, observe us or obsess over us or anything. This is like someone that there's a genuine curiosity there and it's there for a reason, like why they're asking how this works, or like, is it all at
Hmm.
once? Do you do all these things? Or like, oh, you can just take hormones or you can just present, or oh, you don't have to change your voice to do this. There's not like a set timeline of things you have to do. Like, let's see, sorry, my video cut out,
Oh, no,
but
you're good.
expressing in a feminine way or expressing as a woman or expressing as whatever you want to be like doesn't have to fit anyone's mold. It can just be what feels comfortable to you. So like it did take another 6 months after my ecstatic death experience for it to hit beyond like at first I thought I just wanted to grow my hair out and get some more feminine clothing or like be a bit more androgynous. And then I had some hard conversations with myself and others where I'd kind of needed the permission to be trans, or like one or two people even had a moment with me like, hey, it's okay if you're trans, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
not just that it's okay to be trans, for okay for someone to be trans. It's okay if you, dead name, are trans, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I had to be like, why do people keep saying this to me? And yeah, eventually it just like fully locked in, like, oh, okay, I really just have not felt like I was allowed to because I'm this age, or because I didn't know when I was 10 or 12 or 16. Like, it's okay to come to this at 28. And like, it's felt very comfortable ever since. And if you don't mind me monologuing for a bit, like, one of the great things about being trans feminine, or like going from like male presenting to female presenting, is um, the changes are very slow to come physically at first. Like, you get on hormones, which can be relatively easy if Planned Parenthood exists near you. Uh, and there's like a 3-month window where the physical changes like are pretty much non-existent and completely reversible if you stop hormones. But like, it's all internal changes, and you get to finally feel like your body has been deprived of a certain chemical all your life, and it's been receiving too much of another chemical all your life. And this
Mm-hmm.
kind of brings them in balance. We're going to rein back the testosterone and like get your production of estrogen up. And in that 3-month period, you'll really start to feel like, does this feel better? Am I more comfortable in this? And the way I've heard it beautifully described by other people is that you can go your whole life breathing smog and not know it, because you don't know what fresh air tastes like.
Hmm.
And that made a lot more sense once I was a little ways in. I was a lot more in touch with my emotions, or I felt more comfortable in my body and who I was becoming, or like, it didn't solve my problems, but it made them feel worth solving. That's another phrase I hear from trans folk a lot. So I hope that gives you some kind of overview on like both how it works and how it worked for me, why it
Mm-hmm.
took me till I was 28. I'm 32 now. So I'm good 4 years into it, but
Yeah, I mean, I'm
it's a
not.
journey.
I know it's probably not the same for everybody. So
Oh, definitely not.
no, it's I mean, I've always felt like a guy. So I don't know.
Hmm.
So like so it's like I don't know. I'm very cerebral. So sometimes when I ask people something, the simple answer doesn't always satisfy me.
Mm. Yeah, and like for me, I think it was just accepting the default of like, okay, everyone told me I'm this thing, so I guess that's the case. Or like, I didn't really know there was wiggle room, or that what I was experiencing might be signs I wasn't a guy. So
Mm.
yeah, that was where it clicked for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not like gonna go full like what is a woman, but I'm not gonna do that. But it's yeah, sometimes I generally think of myself as rather cerebral. So when my therapist said that, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But is there like a deeper answer to this? I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe it's just because
Hmm.
I'm I'm me. I'm okay with who I am for the most part.
Yeah, I don't know. It's why like I really do prioritize like trying to get stories about transness and about other things that often go unseen out into the world. Like, one of the podcasts I host, as Britton previously mentioned, is Transcending Comics,
Hmm.
which is the first designated trans comic book podcast as far as I've been able to find. There are plenty of other trans comic book podcast hosts out there that do great work. This one's just dedicated to trans representation in the comic book industry. And so there's all kinds of stories that have been able to come out, ones that are very different than my own, especially in the last few episodes, like from people that are plural or have DID, or who like one of our recent episodes was with someone who received a surgery that like now they have both sets of genitalia, and like they have a very unique and
Interesting.
interesting story. Yeah, like that was a thing I
I'll have to
didn't
listen
know
to that.
people could do. Yeah, it's our most recent one. It's called You May Need to Hear This,
Oh yeah,
because
I did see that. I haven't watched it yet because
yeah, on more than just that level, like my guest on that one, Hyde Goltz, just they have some lived experiences that I think largely go unseen in major media. So like this is one we really hope breaks containment or like gets out there to the people that need to see it. And I do that with my other stuff too. Like I produce the repatterning podcast with Arden Lee, who's
Oh
again
yeah.
connection to Grant Morrison.
Hmm.
She's his like spiritual protege or like soul magic apprentice. But they do a bunch of really cool stuff with mental health and spiritualism. But we have guests that have DID or like mental health professionals that kind of break the mold that you usually see in the mental health industrial complex. Or we have people that just have like a spiritual perspective I haven't heard before. Tomorrow we're recording an episode with a really cool professor of AI that's kind of getting into how that relates to spiritualism and ethics and like its environmental impact and its social impact. So like there's just, I want to amplify stories I haven't seen elsewhere, and it's what I'm trying to do with my comics and my podcasting work.
You know what's funny about Arden Lee is I remember I was watching your episode with them, and I should ask real quick, is it, are they strictly non-binary, or is it kind of interchangeable like with Grant Morrison where he's like, I don't really care if you call me him still?
I, they're non-binary, but they use she/they pronouns.
Okay.
So like, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I know people who've done both. Like my old editor at one of my old jobs, they were they them. They, you know, non-binary.
Yeah,
I just called them by their name to prevent any awkwardness. But you know, anyway, I'm getting off the point. But it was funny. I was watching that episode with Arden. He's like, "Oh yeah, Joss gave me a copy of Lost Girls," and I was like, "Wait a second!" And I went on the internet, as one does. And I realized they were talking about Joss Whedon. I'm like, oh, okay, you know. So there you go.
Yeah, it's one
That was
of my
kind of
favorite.
fun. I didn't even know that. I just knew like, oh, she's like, or you know, like this kind of chaos magic, you know, self help. I don't know what they do. I've only watched a couple with like Grant Morrison, so I know it's like chaos magic.
I have met really cool comics people in my few years now making 2 different comic book podcasts. But now that I'm starting to produce podcasts for other people, I really love the wide range of very interesting people I'm getting to meet in the process. So it's fun to get out of just creative writing spaces.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's interesting meeting people who like practice chaos magic or the occult or however you pronounce that, because you know, it's funny. I've read comics most of my life, and like, I mean, I guess creative people are just odd in general, but I've noticed in comics especially, like, there are some real interesting, weird people who were involved, who are or were involved in comics. Like, I was joking with a friend of mine the other day. I'm like, can you imagine like Grant Morrison or Steve Ditko or Frank Miller doing anything other than comics? You know, I don't know. You know, it's the thing.
Like, I could see any of them working in the realm of like sci-fi novels or maybe like weird abstract paintings. Like,
yeah,
I feel like if we were in a parallel timeline where no one thought to invent comic books, I think these people would have still found a way to do something a lot like it, but like it wouldn't be the same. But actually, what I would theorize, are you familiar at all with the artist William Blake?
yes, I love him.
I feel like they would have become their own versions of William Blake, just with like, here's pictures surrounding poetry, because no one thought to invent comic books yet. This is what we're gonna do instead. Because like I do think William Blake kind of is like a proto Jack Kirby in the way he developed his own like mythos and like just archetypes that seem kind of reminiscent of what we would be in the New Gods, or I suppose it's probably deriving from the other way around.
Yeah, I
And then,
remember.
like,
I remember Alan Moore saying something similar about kind of William Blake's this kind of proto graphic novel. I prefer the term comics. It's kind of funny. Like most people who are like in the comics, they usually just call it comics. Like even the people who write like graphic novels, like Art Spiegelman, is like, you know, it's like it's comics. Gonna go over here and smoke my vape pen.
Does Art Spiegelman vape now?
I saw him vape in an interview where someone was trying to ban Moss, and he's just like, "So, Art Spiegelman, how do you feel about them banning Moss?" He just takes a big fucking swipe of his of his vape pen. I'm like, this is great. This guy's great.
Let me do some vape tricks real quick so all the kids in this school know I'm cool and buy the book anyway.
It's so funny. Yeah, no, no, it's you're like I don't know, but yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. But yeah,
You know,
but
Art's
that's why comics are great for me anyway, because it attracts these odd people, who don't really have a home anywhere else.
Yeah. One thing, like, I do want to just plug a reading recommendation based on that alone. I know I suggested this to you in our DMs, but to the audience, Mutants and Mystics by Dr. Jeffrey J. Kripal is specifically about this subject of like the weirdos that have worked in comics and the wider world of like sci-fi and like pre-sci-fi that have largely shaped popular culture and like all these wild, extraordinary, or ecstatic experiences they've had, like similar to my ego death, similar to Grant Morrison's Catmandu experience, like how people beyond just Grant Morrison and Alan Moore and Philip K. Dick and like all their predecessors, like had these pivotal moments that like they were wrestling with trying to make sense out of for the rest of their life that like would then go on to shape what fiction they made and how that led to like say our like the UFO subculture or the creation of sci-fi magazines as we know them today, or just like really cool individuals that worked on some of the lesser known comics. I know one of the I think it was Barry Windsor Smith from Conan the Barbarian. His comics, like I know he had some wild experience of seeing through time. There's an extraordinary count of Raymond Palmer, like not Ray Palmer the Atom, but his namesake, who was like the reason sci-fi exists as it is. And like this guy who could recall all his dreams with perfect clarity and had visions and like was the first person to report on UFO phenomena and invented the science fiction magazine. And yeah, like just all these crazy experiences. And so like if people like Grant Morrison and Philip K. Dick and Alan Moore are something that like really interests you, this is a very scholarly book full of other experiences like that.
I definitely do want to pick that up because that does interest me. And again, that's kind of why I'm I don't know if Jack Kirby was like a weirdo in that sense of like a Ditko or a Morrison or even Frank Miller, doing his Frank Miller thing, but he definitely was an interesting character as well.
Yeah, I don't know if he had like a reality shattering experience like some of those others
Probably
did,
not,
but he is drawing on some of the same like mythos and conspiracy theories that they were buying into, like the whole theory of like the ancient astronaut is woven throughout all of Jack Kirby's work. And so there's a lot of like Gnostic ideas that are there through that. So
everyone loves even Gnosticism.
Even if he wasn't like a psychonaut in his spare time, he was absolutely writing a similar wavelength as all these other folks and what they were planting in the pop culture.
Which is probably why, they liked him so much. Grant Morrison's written a lot about Jack Kirby, Alan Moore has. Jack Kirby is, like, aside from maybe Will Eisner, is the most influential creator in American comics. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe R. Crumb, but I don't know. R. Crumb's over there doing his weird, like, R. Crumb stuff.
Yeah, I've read comics all my life, and I'm sad to say I've never read an R. Crumb comic.
I haven't either. I'm kind of afraid of R. Crumb, honestly.
But some of the most brilliant minds I've had on my shows have told me to read him, and so, if I find a good opportunity, I will.
Yeah, no, I've read, like, it's funny, with Jack Kirby, I have a friend who's a massive Tom King fan. He loves Mr. Miracle, particularly. It's his favorite comic of all time. And he went back and read The Fourth World from Jack Kirby, and he was telling me, like, oh, this is actually pretty good. It's aged for sure, but it's really good. So, yeah, I'll have to find it at some point.
If I ever have a lot of time on my hands to read old comics, like I would really love to go through that mythic trilogy of sorts Jack had going from like his through the Fourth World and into Eternals. I just don't have as much time to read comics as I'd like, since I'm so busy making comics and making podcasts about comics. But say
Yeah,
I'm
that's
ever
the
knocked
rub.
out and can't create for a while, like I'm binging that. I'll finally read the Jack Kirby Stan Lee Fantastic Four, skipping Stan Lee's caption boxes more or less. But yeah, I gotta go back to the classics.
It's not all bad. There's some fun witty banter in there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
but it's yeah, but yeah, that's one of the things I'm really fascinated by with like comics or even science fiction. I'm gonna be reading Astounding this year, which is partly a biography, partly a study of like some of the major players of like the golden age of science fiction, like Robert Heinlein and John W. Campbell to a lesser extent, which he was an oddball as well.
hmm.
Um, Even L. Ron Hubbard and all the fun stuff that came from that from that guy.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that stuff fascinates me though.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you'll like looking into this Raymond Palmer character because he's like uh, a less chaotic evil L. Ron Hubbard. Or like, what if someone bought into that there is like a secret religion to everything I've been writing out there, or like I'm gonna write myself into living in the same world as Superman and aliens, but didn't actually start a religion out of it or went out of their way not to do that, but like once you've had the walls of your reality shake, or you've witnessed some kind of otherworldly experience, or like been abducted by aliens or spoken to God, like yeah, it really has to be a conscious choice not to start a religion out of it. And just sticking to the sci-fi novels and comics is a really good alternative. And I I would caution all sci-fi writers not to take the L. Ron Hubbard route, even if it does make you a lot more money.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, I like that kind of I like those weird stories. I don't know why. It's like Otto
Mm.
Bender. He was a guy who created like Supergirl, and he was basically responsible for a lot of the Silver Age, goodness. Um, and he was all like, "Yo, what if ancient aliens? That's a good idea." And people are like, "What?" I didn't know he was in the Ancient Aliens though until very recently. I was like, "Oh, I just thought he did like I thought he was like Gardner Fox, just writing these like stories for kids." It's like, no, he was an interesting guy too.
Yeah, I forget all the details, but there is a section about Bender in the Jeff Kripal book.
Oh
So
man, I'll have to
yeah,
find this book as soon as possible. I'll have to see it's on Amazon or something.
yeah. Now, speaking of like going back and reading the classics, to prepare for this, I thought it'd be fun to compare Grant Morrison's first like major superhero epic or like
Mm, mm-hmm.
multi-dimensional saga with their most recent one. So
Yeah.
I've been reading Zenith from
Mm.
2000 AD side by side with Multiversity.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting. How's that been
yeah,
going?
I just finished Zenith last night, and there's a lot I like about it, and it's really interesting to see how much of Grant Morrison's ideas and tropes are already there. Like within the first volume, we see like, oh, like the true evil of this world is fourth dimensional, like out of this. These like fourth dimensional evil demon spirits that are trying to possess our Nazi Superman and control the world
Interesting.
and like shape the world into what they want, shape reality into something else more conducive to them, so we can all become some big brain in the sky. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is every Grant Morrison story. This is in Invisibles. This is in
Yeah.
Justice League and Final Crisis and Multiversity. Like that, you were already cooking with this, and
Yeah, I
like,
mean, I'm probably not gonna read like the like super wild stuff like Multiversity, even though I've read Pax Americana already. I didn't know that was part of the Multiversity, but whatever. Or like Final Crisis, or what's the other big event he did? Seven Soldiers of Victory.
mm,
I'll save that for another time. But yeah, I mean, for I am hoping to read Zenith sometime in like August or something, because like I've always wanted to read like 2000 AD. I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
mm, yeah. When Grant was on my show, they did have a comment about like they have one of the first ever trans superheroes in Zenith with Metamaid,
Hmm.
and like kind of I think they wanted to do something with that character, but like it's received a lot of criticism, and I can see why now, having read the story. Like she's just a very sexually forward person, and it kind of builds up to one joke about her being trans, and then that's the last we see of her. So like,
Well, yeah, I can see how that hasn't aged as well.
yeah, but I'm like, hey, this is coming from the same mind that gave us Lord Fanny from the Invisibles, and Lord Fanny freaking rules. I love that character so much. Like, they got better. You can't expect all early representation to be great, and I think Grant's done a lot for the like trans comic scene, and you know, the Wachowskis decided seemingly to take a lot from the Invisibles, except for having overtly trans characters the way Invisibles does. So, you
Yeah,
know, I'll give points for its due.
yeah. I mean, my next Grant Morrison, I'm just gonna pull it out. I'm just gonna start his Doom Patrol very soon, so I'm very much looking forward to that because I know it's kind of one of the ones because I'm kind of I think with Grant Morrison anyway. I mean, this Morrison-a-thon I've been doing is uh it's more me trying to get better acquainted with a lot of his work. 'Cause, you know, I'm very acquainted with a lot of the other English invasion people, like, you know, Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman and Garth Ennis and Warren Ellis. Grant Morrison, aside from a couple comics, like I read The Invisibles when I was younger, and I was like, I have no idea what he's going on about in half of this, which I'm actually hoping to reread sometime in July. So I'm very curious to see where I'll be at now that I'm 25 years old and not a teenager anymore. Um, but anyway, I read like All Star Superman, and that's my favorite. Which that might be a normie pick. I'm sorry for like the hardcore like Grant Morrison fans, but oh man, it's just it's so good,
Yeah,
you
it
know.
was my intro to them as well, and like still probably my well. I think actually their Superman Beyond story in Final Crisis has kind of surpassed it as my favorite Superman comic. But
Real okay,
yeah,
yeah, that's interesting. I read that. I'm like, yeah, and I read like Arkham Asylum. I'm like, awesome, you know. So I've read like some of the famous, like I've read like their X-Men run and stuff like that, but I'm like, I want to get better acquainted with you know Morrison's work in a way I haven't been able to. So I'm just gonna do it this year, and it's been a fun ride. It's been interesting. Like I read Animal Man, which was a lot of fun, and it's
I
stuck in my mind ever since I read it. So
yeah, that's probably my favorite of Grant's still. I read it the first time last year, and I couldn't believe like his first DC comic is still like my favorite of what they've done, when I do really appreciate what they've done later on. But Animal Man rules, and like it does the whole superhero deconstruction in just 20 some issues where others needed like over 100, but like
mm.
this feels like more condensed Invincible or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, and spoiler, he meets Morrison. You're like, whoa, that's crazy, you know. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's been. I'm gonna read Doom Patrol next because like it's one I've heard about for a very long time. I know it's kind of influential in a lot of ways. Like Gerard Way is a big fan of it.
Hmm.
He even wrote his own version of the Doom Patrol some years ago. Though I read the first couple volumes of that, and I just kind of not like lost interest, but like the whole young animal thing got so convoluted. I'm like, I'm backing out until someone collects this in an omnibus or something. But you know,
Hmm.
I don't know if you've read their Doom Patrol, but I've heard it's wild.
Yeah, I want to do a big Doom Patrol deep dive in the near future. Like the one that really has my eye is the Rachel Pollack run, which follows
Mm-hmm.
Grant
I've heard that
Morrison's.
one's really good too.
Yeah, like I know it's got people that will buy. It's like maybe peak Doom Patrol, or like maybe even surpasses it in some ways. But like it was written by the first openly trans writer in mainstream comics, who was also a huge figure in tarot. And I'm doing some podcast stuff related to Rachel Pollack in the near future. So like it feels very like the right time, but I got to read through Grant's Doom Patrol, and like then I'll probably do Gerard Way's afterwards, since like, I mean, Grant was my dream guest leading up to their appearance on Transcending Comics. Like that's what I had hoped for when I started doing comic interviews 5+ years ago. But I think like Gerard Way's pretty up there. Like if I could interview anyone that's worked in comics, Gerard Way would probably be the next person that I would love to just like get their perspective, because their music was so huge for me growing up, and like just seeing people that walk both worlds of like comics and music, that's just fascinating to me. And Black Parade is incredible, and like I just want to pick I want to pick the brain of the mind behind the Black Parade.
Yeah, I really liked My Chemical Romance in high school, which, and generally I don't care for emo music, but for some reason the My Chemical Romance fell into the. It was probably because a lot of my friends were listening to it and were like, "Hey man, you should listen to this. This'll rock your socks off." And they were right. That's a great album.
Yeah. I'll be curious to hear what you think about Invisibles this time around, especially knowing you've now read Super Gods and some of Grant's other work. Like, I am really glad I took my time with the Invisibles. Like, I started reading it. I had a very weird experience 3 issues in that was like a psychedelic experience minus the psychedelics that like I could not explain. And I decided from there, like, I was not going to finish this series until I met Grant Morrison. And I did time it right. Like, I finished reading that series through the first time the day Grant came on Arden Lee's podcast. So finished it that morning. But like, it wasn't just for weird personal reasons like that. It was also a need to like understand this world better. Not just that in the comics, but like I look into Grant's occult work a bit. Like I have the Book of Lies, which they have a few pieces in of like essays about occultism and magic, spiritualism stuff, and just a lot of essays from other great writers on like just, you know, the history of magic and occultists. So like I wanted to know more about what they were writing about in the Invisibles, and I was able to catch so much more on further reads. Like I was rereading each prior volume or the whole series before I would advance it. And I'm lucky to have a partner that's kind of a poetry scholar, knows a lot about literature. So she was able to fill me in on like the William Blake references and like B. Shelley and Lord Byron. And I mean, I know Mary Shelley, but B. Shelley, I just know is Ada Lovelace's dad for all intents and purposes. So like getting this wider exposure like really helped me, and it's one I would not ever expect people to like speed read, and I certainly wouldn't give it to a teenager unless they were like the trippiest teenager I ever met. So I'm not surprised you bounced off it in your earlier years.
I was kind of two minds on Grant Morrison. I still think it exists. I find, you know, there's a Grant Morrison who I mean, I'm not gonna deny he's genuinely brilliant when he's on. You know, you get something like All Star Superman or Arkham Asylum or even Animal Man. There's some parts of Animal Man that I'm like, wow, this is really like well done. You know, but there's sometimes I do find that Grant's imagination sometimes gets away from him. I felt that kind of happened with the Invisibles. I don't, you know, maybe I'll see if my opinion changes in the Invisibles. I don't know if it will, but you know, it might. It was interesting reading Super Gods though, because I read that recently, and it was kind of like a nice, like it was kind of like a dive into how Grant Morrison thinks. It gave me a deeper context for a lot of the stuff he was doing in like the Invisible, so that'll probably help me out when I read it again. And then also when he was talking about Kathmandu, and I kind of I gave it some thought, and I'm like, it's literally like the sequence from All Star Superman when Lex is having this profound realization, you know, about how Superman sees the world. That's when I texted you about it, so I was like, you think that was another way of him to like articulate that experience? You're like, oh, for sure. So
yeah,
there you go.
I mean, they even made it the bald character, which I mean, that's something
that's a good
Grant
point too.
does. Like they shaved their head to look like King Mob and the Invisibles, so they had that connection, and you know they've passed it along in All Star Superman. And yeah, like that moment definitely hits differently after like knowing about the Kathmandu experience or having been in Lex's shoes of like seeing time as a flat circle or like just getting that wider perspective of how everything's connected. And I don't know, I would love to see Grant revisit that moment now, since I think uh, the popular culture of like people into psychedelics have sort of moved past this idea of like, if we could just give these billionaires and world leaders a psychedelic experience, maybe they'd stop treating people like ants, or like maybe they'd finally change their tune, or like see how everyone's connected. But as it turns out, when like some kind of narcissistic billionaire has a psychedelic experience, it tends to just amplify what's already there, or like they just see more feudalism or wanting to like live forever. Like I don't know, it hasn't had the experience I think a lot of aspiring psychonauts had hoped it would, of turning these people around. So like I wonder if Grant would still write that, but I think that underlying message of like Lex seeing the Superman's eyes would like, yeah, that still stands on its own beyond the underlying like psychedelic parallels with it.
Yeah, it was funny because I had never thought of it like, and that's one of my favorite moments from All Star Superman. It's kind of that, final, like the, it's kind of Superman's version of when Batman beats up Superman in The Dark Knight Returns and is like, I beat you, except in like All Star, it's Superman beats Lex Luthor with like a philosophical understanding of the universe. I don't know.
He makes Lex learn empathy.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate victory right there.
Yeah, and it's a great moment. It's really but I was like, oh, I didn't that didn't intersect until I read Super Gods. I felt kind of dumb after. I'm like, how did I not see that before?
What is weird is like seeing how much of that is present before Grant's Kathmandu experience, because they were ways into Invisibles and like working for Vertigo when that happened. Like I think there were maybe 2 or 3 issues into the Invisibles when it happened, and like in Zenith, I'm still seeing some of these ideas. So I'm not surprised Grant had the experience he did when that all came together in Kathmandu. Like whether it was the bit of hash he smoked or like the spiritual experience they sought out to do walking those steps. But yeah, like when these experiences happen to people, they always take the shape of things that are familiar to them. Like for me, my psychedelic experience was filled with Power Rangers imagery and other bits and pieces from like things I loved. Like Bo Burnham was there, or like the woods I was walking through looked like a scene from Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
So like Grant getting this like magic experience of being abducted by aliens, seeing how all time exists at once, like I'm still seeing some of these themes in their writing and ideas from before that happened. So that's it's what they described. I'm not surprised at all at the shape it took for them.
That's funny you say that, because it was interesting. That was another thing I thought was interesting about reading Super Gods is, a lot of people like to sometimes joke about like, oh, Grant Morrison, he likes psychedelics, yada yada. But like when you think of like Animal Man or like Doom Patrol or I mean, I haven't read Doom Patrol yet, but I know Doom Patrol gets really weird. But like that was all Morrison. That was like most of it was all him or them. It wasn't like he wasn't even taking like, or if his narration in Super Gods is to be believed, his like he didn't start experimenting with drugs until like a little into Doom Patrol. Which is kind of what you were hinting at. It's like but experimenting with psychedelics kind of amplified that what was already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I would recommend, especially for anyone getting into the Invisibles, to check out Grant Morrison's Substack and their posts, Me, Myself, and They. Not only does that kind of set the matter to rest on Grant's pronouns, where they officially announce, like, yeah, they fits best, but more for plurality reasons than them fitting the label of non-binary, which they never really claimed. But they're like, yeah, they is maybe preferred to he, except he. It's all kind of whatever. Just don't be an ass about it. But more importantly to our discussion, they get into the process of writing the Invisibles like as an actual ritual, like not beyond just I saw these things and I had to put them in the comic. Or like when I would sit down to write them, I would do this ritual. They would dress up in a means kind of like Lord Fanny, like it was like their shamanic initiation, and like come up on XYZ substance. They'd put on makeup, look in this comic book mirror, and play a certain album. And like if I'm ever working on some kind of trippy ongoing series, I absolutely intend to figure out what that ritual is for me. But like I think it helps you understand the headspace they were in for it, and it might make their approach to the comic make a bit more sense if you understand what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because it was funny. You sent me that video the other day of that guy who was talking about Grant Morrison's stuff, and a lot of people compare Grant Morrison to Alan Moore, and sometimes fairly, sometimes unfairly, and I won't harp on it too much, but I always felt like a better fit for Grant Morrison is Philip K. Dick. They both had these very like deep, like spiritual / psychological experiences that like shifted them in a very profound way. I mean, the difference being that Philip K. Dick was very like paranoid, existential dread, and Morrison's a bit more optimistic. But I do think they overlap in places far stronger than how Morrison and Moore overlap. In many ways, I kind of feel like it's been interesting. I've been thinking about it since I read Super Gods. Like there's kind of been this conversation between the two of them, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. I don't know either of these people, so I don't know. But you can kind of definitely sense it from how at least Morrison writes about it in like Super Gods.
Yeah. Now, have you ever watched Grant's disinformation speech from 2000?
Is it the one where he screams?
Yeah, it's the one where he screams.
Yes.
Okay,
it's funny. That was kind of the first like Grant Morrison-y thing. I watched that, and I watched Grant Morrison Talking with Gods, which I always say, if you want an idea of what Grant Morrison's like, you should watch Talking with Gods first, because I think that gives you a good idea without, him just going like, I got abducted by aliens. You're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
Yeah, for me, my introduction to them was their appearances on what at the time was called Fat Man on Batman, or Kevin Smith's Batman Beyond show. I think that's what got me to read like All-Star Superman and the Rock of Ages arc of Justice League. And like, I'll drop this here. My dead name was Grant. So like
really?
finding out that like, oh, there's someone who shares my name that writes really cool Superman comics. And like, that's what got me into Superman. That helped me get more into podcasts in general. Like, I don't often listen to Kevin Smith now, but like that was just, I barely knew what a podcast was. I just knew Kevin Smith made them. Thanks to
Kevin Smith, he sometimes goes on for like 4 hours. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this.
But I know they've had some like life-shaking experiences as well. Like, knew about the first near-death scare, out-of-body experience, and I think there's been one since then. So, I've wanted to reconnect with the Kevin Smith spheres. Just like, did Kevin Smith have a similar Kathmandu experience of their own?
I know he almost had a heart attack when he was doing a show, and that kind of, he's lost a lot of weight since then. So now he has puppy dog eyes, because I see him on Instagram sometimes, and I don't know him, but anyway, I forgot the point I was making. But
you had previously been comparing Grant to Philip K. Dick.
Yes, I think that's far more appropriate, but not as many people know who Philip K. Dick is, which is sad, because I think he's, aside from maybe the movies that have been made from his work, and there have been a lot.
Yeah. Okay. No, like, of course, Blade Runner and Scanner Darkly, and kind of Total Recall. Are there many others beyond that?
Yeah, I can't think of all of them at the moment. I know the Adjustment Bureau, the Matt Damon movie, that's based on one of his stories.
Oh,
Damn, they made a show that's basically adapting some of his short stories. They've done
right.
a
I've
lot of stuff
seen
because
that.
like he's one of those guys, like he has so many insane ideas where you can kind of go like, oh, I can just kind of take the idea and play with it a little bit without fully adapting the work, which
Yeah,
is
I
something that frustrates me as a fan of his, because a lot of his film adaptations aren't really film adaptations. They're more people remixing the ideas, basically just taking the core idea and doing their own thing with it, like
mhm.
a Blade Runner or a Total Recall.
Which sometimes I think that can be for the better. I don't know
Yes.
how often. Like, uh, I just read The Man in the High Castle for the first time last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I know the Amazon show takes a lot of liberties, but at the same time, like, I don't know if The Man in the High Castle, like a direct adaptation, really works, especially if you have to market a movie on like, what if the Nazis won World War II, and then you're like, oh, action movie? They're like, no, a guy fires a gun like once, mostly off screen. Like, yeah, you just can't
It's more
do
about
that.
how like ideas influence reality. So, it's kind of like it's more like a heady experience. But yeah, it's like I always tell people, like if you want like raw, like the actual Philip K. Dick, like what his style is actually like, go watch A Scanner Darkly, because that is the closest to like his actual work that Hollywood has gotten.
Hmm.
And in my
Yeah.
opinion, the best one aside from maybe Blade Runner.
And as a follow up, you should definitely check out Waking Life by Richard Linklater. Like, it's, same director as A
Oh
Scanner
yeah,
Darkly and
that's
same
the other one that was in
style.
the rotoscoping, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I'll
and
have to
it's
watch that.
one of my favorite movies. Like, there's a certain kind of psychedelic media I really appeals to me. Midnight Gospel is the
Isn't that
uh
isn't that the show
yeah.
from the guy who did Adventure Time?
Yeah, Pendleton Ward did the animation for it, and it's like an adaptation of a podcast, or it's
Interesting.
taking
Yeah, that's
actual
right.
bits, yeah, from Duncan Trussell's show. And current day Duncan Trussell, I'm not as into, but 2018 or whenever that show came
Did
out,
he like
Duncan
drop
Trussell,
into
I'm a
the
bit more
right
into.
wing sphere or something?
He was always tight with Joe Rogan,
Oh,
and
there's
it's
always
not
this.
gotten better.
There's
I'm
always
not gonna air his dirty laundry here, but like,
yeah. That's always kind of the funny thing, because like with Joe Rogan, he's kind of this odd figure who's also into psychedelics and drugs, but he's kind of like gone. I don't know what his political. I don't. I won't go into that rabbit hole. Let's just say, because
hmm,
that's a rabbit hole I don't want to unpack today. But yeah, he's interesting guy. It was funny the other day. I heard him say he wanted to be a comic book artist when he was growing up, and I'm like, that's honestly fitting. That sounds
hmm,
fitting.
yeah, you know, I think the world might have been better if that had been the route. I mean, like,
Also, UFC attracts oddballs too. Like
yeah,
that's another thing too.
like the worst case scenario of someone who could be an asshole going into comics is Ethan Van Sciver.
Oh
And
God.
like, I'm a lot more worried about what Joe Rogan says to his followers about trans people than I am about what Ethan Van Sciver tells his followers about trans people. Uh, and honestly, one of those two might be too busy being bigoted to even get to trans people. He's still talking about how much he hates women and people who aren't as pale as me. But like Joe Rogan's Steve-O episode recently, that terrifies me that there are millions of people that just listen to that and accept it at face value. But I think, yeah, also that's the most I want to talk about. The guy from Fear Factor who had people eat bugs for money and now gets millions to talk about psychedelics on Spotify. But back to the Midnight Gospel. Awesome adaptation of a podcast that's just trippy images over like in-depth spiritual and psychedelic conversations. And that's what Waking Life has. And it's like a sample size of 2 entries in this genre. I would love to find a third. I, with my own podcast, tried to make a third with my It's Morphin Time episode about my psychedelic experience. But
You know
like,
what's
it's
funny? It's funny because the last couple of episodes I've been doing of the show, I've been talking about psychedelics with people. So, because I'm always hearing about these like profound psychedelic revelations people have when using psychedelics, and I'm just like, I've never really been wanting to use drugs, but I'm like, I
Mm,
would love to try psychedelics at some point in my life. I don't know when. Maybe not right now because I'm still kind of figuring stuff out. Maybe that's a
yeah.
perfect time. I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm never going to encourage people to take drugs, but my experience with it that I follow is like wait for the opportunity to find you or wait for it to call to you rather than seeking it out because like set and setting is everything and like
Yeah, I don't want to
there's
go to some like
message to
random
it.
dude behind a grocery store. It's like, hey, you want some LSD? And you're like, no.
Mm,
How do I know you didn't
yeah.
spike this with something else? Yeah, fucking
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, so like I think that there are a lot brighter minds than I that have recommended like, hey, try them once in your life and see what comes of it. Like it's a really great way to look inward or like have some perspective shaking experience that a lot of us need. But like there are other means of getting the same thing. Some of them are even more dangerous than psychedelics because like the parallels between psychedelic like ego death and near death experiences or people see on like seizures or uh, any other kind of traumatic experience, like there's a lot of overlap. Or you can meditate a bunch. You can get really good at meditation and kind of have that. There are other avenues to ego dissolution or these same kind of awakenings, but it's not predictable, and a lot of them are kind of dangerous.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. I was kind of like, yeah, I don't want to go into like go full Sid Barrett and just turn into some like tragic hermit who like lives with his sister and like paints stuff, which doesn't sound like
Hmm.
too bad of a life. But I don't want to go crazy after using drugs. Is what I'm trying to get at.
But you are 25 now, and that's like kind of the threshold of where I'd be like, wait till after you're 25, not because the brain development thing is kind of a myth to my understanding of like, oh yeah, your brain's fully developed at 25. I don't think that's checks out
Well,
science
yeah,
wise.
that's the thing. Someone else was saying is like, well, you're like a full on adult now, so I'm sure you'll be fine. Like, don't use it when you're like 14 years old. I'm like, yeah, I wasn't really into that when I was in high school.
Yeah, like before 25, your life is so rapidly changing from like just the normal progression out of adolescence that it's like, hey, you don't need psychedelics to shape your worldview because you're still growing up and still forming. There are some substances I'm really curious about, like ayahuasca or like serious like DMT, but I'm waiting until I'm like
Ayahuasca, what the hell is that?
ayahuasca. Oh yeah, it's like very common in indigenous ceremonies.
Oh, that's right. I'm like, that name sounds familiar for some reason.
Than certain tribes. I should clarify. Mention it in Brave New World.
Maybe that wasn't.
Uh,
Maybe that was in Animal Man because he takes psychedelics,
I think. I
something
think
like
when they're on
that.
top of the mountain, I think it was just LSD,
I
but
don't
it
know.
might have been ayahuasca. I forget. Anyway, those like, I want to wait till I'm 40 to have that kind of experience. Just 'cause I'm like, I'm still integrating and processing the last major one of these, and I can have smaller experiences at my when I my recurrent trips to music festivals. But yeah, I feel like I want my life to stagnate a bit more before I crack it open again and talk to the time snakes and machine elves and elder gods or whatever you see on DMT.
That's another thing because you work with Arden Lee, and they do a lot of stuff with like chaos magic, and chaos magic, just like the occult or like magic or mysticism's always kind of fascinated me. I don't know if I would try to become an occultist. My kind of spiritual journey has been um would you say like that's something, is it something you've just tangentially like are related to because you've done work with art, and is it something you're interested in experimenting with, or is it somewhere in between?
Uh it's at the very least somewhere in between.
Or are
Like
you a chaos magician? I don't know. I've never had a chaos magician on here before.
yeah, the thing about chaos magic is it's about like finding what works for you or like treating it as something results based as like what actually changes your experience of navigating with the world, not just like picking a grab bag of what you like, but like what do you feel actually works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess to give my backstory of like when I felt like I actually needed to look into this seriously, or what is the chaos magic side of Grant Morrison, it was after reading the third issue of the Invisibles. Like, I was aware of that side of them, but like I was just preparing for launching Transcending Comics because like there's notable trans characters in this book. 3 issues in, Dane has the like Neo, you're in the Matrix moment, or they see the universe through the eyes of a bird and like see like that this is the overlap of 2 wider dimensions. The world isn't what you think it is. Reality isn't what you think it is. It's all constructed. It's all controlled. And the next day, like I felt a little sick, but not in like a cold or a flu sense, just like a bit disoriented,
like
a bit
dread,
fatigued.
maybe.
Not even that. I was just like, fatigued and a little dizzy, and like disoriented.
Well, that's the thing with like because like I've heard Grant Morrison go like, "Oh yeah, I've spawned like demons in my house." I'm like, I don't want to fucking do that. Like, it's kind of scary. I don't want to do that. You know.
But like, this was the day I was gonna record the first episode of Transcending Comics with Blue Del Conte. I call out of work, I postpone the interview, and I lay down on my couch, and I'm just looking at this plaid design of a quilt laying over my couch, and I kind of drift off into some in-between space of consciousness, some liminal space, and like the plaid pattern turns into like 2001 A Space Odyssey visuals. And what I experienced from there, I can only describe as a vision, like, or something like it, because like I've had psychedelic experiences, I've had lucid dreams. This was a secret third thing. Like I witnessed things in first person, like meeting some kind of underwater doppelganger of myself, or like flying through the air as like a bird or a pilot doing all kinds of barrel rolls. And like it wasn't like a dream where the things you think of kind of come in, you control the narrative. This was more like the sunken place from Get Out, of like, I am witnessing this through my eyes. I am not controlling where I am looking. Even this is all like first person. That sounds kind of frightening. A little bit, but like I was still aware I was in my basement and like just wanted to see where it went. And like, you know, I felt like I was experiencing the memories of someone else. At a certain point, I realized I had to like save this crashing plane that I was the pilot of. Like I was seeing this pilot's memories, and I had to think of a way to get out of it. And I'm like, I know, Superman can rescue me. And I see this Superman figure watching my plane crash and like playing out in his mind all the ways he could do something about it. But this isn't comic book physics. If he tries to just catch the plane, he'll punch right through it and make it worse for everyone. And like he's playing through these different disastrous scenarios, and then eventually he starts flying around my plane, like doing somersaults around it, and then expanding that into like a sphere, and like going fast enough that the centrifugal force is like balancing out the plane to make it glide. And as I'm seeing this like increasingly smaller, faster image of Superman going around me, stabilizing me, I'm like, wait a minute, this idea of like an idea moving at super sonic speeds around me, it could be a form of like multi-dimensional travel, at least in the mind. And then like I'm back to really big, scary, like multi-dimensional imagery. I'm seeing like eldritch beings big enough that they could wipe us out and not even realize they had done so, like stepping on an ant or something. I'm seeing the world surrounded by this red bleed space that I would later read Grant Morrison comics that have the bleed, and it looked like that. It's all feeding into this pillar sun thing surrounding the earth. That's just saying like they imagine themselves into it, or they believe themselves into existence. They believe themselves into existence. They believe themselves into existence. It was like the great I. And like I'm just trying to think like, okay, you know what? I manifested Superman to save me a couple minutes ago. Well, maybe I can manifest some answers to what I'm witnessing here. And then like through my like closed eyes, I see the lights of my room dim and brighten 3 times back to back. And I hear in a very distinct Scottish accent, well, there we are. Tomi and I was it. And like I'm in the mental presence of like
I was gonna joke earlier about Grant Morrison showing up, but that just
Yeah, like I'm not saying Grant astral projected into whatever I was
Oh
experiencing.
no,
I don't.
no.
I
It's just
asked,
that's so funny.
but
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
no, it's funny, but like I'm in the presence of this like mental image of Grant on this like the edge of this weird pool of like, okay, below here is like the unconscious. If you drift into that, you fall asleep. Up above is the light. If you go into that, you'll wake up. And I get writing advice from Grant. Like, I haven't finished When We Transform yet. I haven't launched Transcending Comics or any of these things. And they tell me all about the importance. Like, they're like, okay, well, since I'm in your mind, like I can see your ideas and your thoughts of like doing your comic as a webtoon or a digital thing. Like, well, that's great for finding a global audience. The magic of bringing an idea into physical reality requires like a physical copy to be made. So you have to do that. Like you have to get a physical version of this. They gave me insight on like speaking oneself into existence and me using my creative work and my podcast to do that, since I have control over like what version of myself I send out into the world. And like, as far as, you know, looking up to them and like wanting to have them on the show, I got the advice of like, yeah, you need to make this into a show that I or that Grant would want to be on. And from there, like I drifted off. I started like waking up chanting this word that had come to me in a psychedelic state in a music festival a few weeks before, but was I am you repeated over and over again. Like this, I thinking the I am of like old timey biblical God expanded out to like you seeing yourself in the universe, you seeing yourself in the eyes of another, and saying, I am you. And I'm saying that over and over again. I am you. I am you. I am you. Iamu. 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 A year and a half later, I find the word Iamu written backwards and forwards in Seven Soldiers of Victory, and I'm like, I had not read that comic before. But
yeah, that's also, if I remember right, I think that's where the word Yahweh comes from.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Like I did get to ask Grant about that when I had them on the show of like, where does Iamu come from? And they compared it to that.
Yeah,
But like,
yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. You know, I with like things like magic or stuff like that, because like, you know, I don't know. I would like to think myself as rather skeptical of the idea, but I have seen that like, you know, it's not just a metaphor. This is real to people like Grant Morrison.
yeah, like,
And it's not like, you know, Philip K. Dick, where you can kind of go like, okay, he might have been having a nervous breakdown while having this, you know, intense experience. But like, you know, Grant Morrison, very, you know, it's definitely eccentric, no doubt about that. But lucid is what I'm trying to get at.
for me in my journey though, coming out of this and experiencing something like that while entirely sober, like that was way harder to make sense out of than, you know, as something that I can at least blame on a substance.
Exactly.
But like,
Yeah.
for me though, like the way I interpreted this was that like I had just read The Invisibles. My mind was in a state where it just had all the components to assemble this experience. Like I downloaded the knowledge, I had the right input, and whether or not this was like something divine, something supernatural, or just like you had a fever dream because you were sleep deprived or a little sick, my brain gave me a novel experience that I had never experienced before or since. And it was up to me, like, if that was supposed to mean something, I had to make it mean something. So, like, that weekend, I got my ass to a library and I finished the rest of When We Transform, like, beyond the 6 pages I had originally told you about, getting that into a script form ready to adapt. I started looking into Grant's Substack posts, which is like how I found out about like Me, Myself, and They and their magic practices. They have some really cool essays about magic there, which is how I found out about Arden Lee and like them as their sole spiritual apprentice. And so I started looking into Arden's work. So I'm like, I can't just email Grant what just happened to me. It doesn't mean anything with this version of me. And plus, it's just like some fan being like, hey, I had a dream about you. What are we going to do with that? Instead, like, if I was going to meet Grant, I
Morrison
wanted
would
this
be
to
an
mean
interesting
something.
person to talk to. I mean, I probably, because I don't have as much knowledge as like esoteria as he does, but you know, he seems. I'm sure you can speak to this because you've met them.
Mhm.
But it seems like you wouldn't be bored in a conversation with Grant Morrison.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah. Like that, I seek out podcast appearances with them because they are never boring. Like they're some of the most fascinating things I've ever heard. Like the first time I heard them on a podcast, it totally reshaped my worldview and like made me open to like the possibility of this realm of ideas. And like to your point earlier about like, is magic real? Like all I can tell you is that altered states of consciousness are 100% real. We all know this because we dream frequently. And there's a lot of states out there beyond just being awake, sleeping, and dreaming. There are any number of other states of altered consciousness than that. And those have shaped our religious beliefs, our thoughts of the paranormal, our folklore for literally since like the dawn of recorded history. And a lot of what's in magic is just a means of altering one's consciousness. Like, okay,
Mm.
you put yourself in these mind states, you fast, you light these incenses, or like you create these stimuli, you quiet your mind, and thing happens afterwards. Whether that's like a literal angel, demon, god, whatever that's showing up, or whether that's just like, hey, we found a way to give people a psychedelic experience without necessarily taking one of the known substances or just like putting yourself in a state of mind where you are susceptible to these things. I'm not qualified to say one way or the other, but I can tell you altered states of consciousness are real. They're really important. They shape culture. They're what give us some of our best ideas. They change lives. So
Yeah, and you can even see
there's
this
power
in
there.
like you mentioned William Blake earlier. William Blake would talk about how he would, however you choose to believe it, either hallucinated or imagined or whatever you wish to call it, like angels or creatures that would.
Hmm.
So it's not just that experience. That was really badly worded. I'm sorry.
No, I get what you're saying though. Like we all knew that kid in the playground that like would talk about now seeing ghosts or like getting his acceptance letter to Hogwarts, but he couldn't show anyone. And like we all knew that kid was full of shit. But then you meet people later in life that like you know them for a while, and then it just gets brought up that like, yeah, I see ghosts, or like I do this thing, or just like there is some otherworldly kind of personal experience they have that they don't like make define their life, but it's something that like they can't quite explain, and you maybe don't have a rational explanation for it yourself, but like it is to their subjective like personal experience, it's very much real or like affects the way
Hmm.
they navigate the world. And what Grant talks about in the Disinfocon speech and many others like them say in other written works is like we had a context for this before this like post-industrial world we live in. Like people like this could be the village shaman, or like
Hmm.
hearing voices, having multiple identities, or uh, just being neurodivergent had its place in society. We had a context for it other than just being mentally ill, go to the hospital, take some pills about it. Instead, like this different lived state of consciousness one has, like could be useful, or like yeah, had
Yeah,
a
or
utility.
kind of like what Alan Moore said about William Blake. Like he thought what he saw in his head was as real to him as what is real in the material world.
Yeah, and like I don't mean to discount like the religion I was raised with, but after having like a psychedelic experience and like physically feeling my own death and like seeing these connections and everything and having an experience that felt more real than real, all of a sudden I knew that's what like every religious experience ever probably was, or at least like this is what that would have felt like. And what does someone a couple thousand years ago do with an experience like that? Like
Hmm.
you try and tell others, you turn it into a story, maybe that gets written down, and over time that like shapes culture, shapes common values and stuff. Like
Hmm.
the thing that really clicked into place for me at a later festival was that God's basically a comic book character, or like you have all these
Okay.
collections of these experiences that people have written down. And like, say you're trying to get someone into Batman or Superman, you're not going to
Uh-huh.
tell them go back to Action Comics, Detective Comics, read every issue up to the present. It'll take you all your life. No, you give them like maybe a couple graphic novels and like, hey, this is the best, the best. This is representative of like what this character is, what they mean, their values, what they stand for. That's basically what most religious texts, or at least the Bible, is, of like, hey, here are the best collected works of these figures, or like this is
Yeah,
our
I see what you mean. Yeah.
library of stories, but like it paints a picture of God and Jesus and all these other biblical figures. And it's like, okay, we're getting a mix of like, do you want the Snyder Bros to control what people think of Batman forever?
Oh God.
Because that did kind of happen to Christianity in some sense, or it's like, the Snyderius Bros of the Catholic Church for a number of years got to control this narrative, or like other people in power have gotten to control these narratives over time, and like that's shaped how our culture views whatever religious being we have in mind. But like, yeah, all they are is like the culmination of a collection of stories. I think Grant and others would call them a thought form, and like how we view them is based on the stories we've maintained about them.
Yeah, or my favorite fantasy novel is American Gods, which I know is probably a very I won't go into that. I'm not going into that today.
Yeah.
But it's all about that, is what I'm trying to say. It's like God's being your mind makes it real, basically. Like the belief in those gods makes it real.
Yeah.
And even differentiates, like, there's the version of Jesus who's like the kind of caricature, type of Jesus that like someone in MAGA might believe, and then there's like the more like hippie Jesus. There's distinctions there. It shows how people have different ideas of the same thing.
Yeah, and like Neil does get into that a lot with like their other work. Like there's elements of that in Sandman, and like the way different cultures see the same being, some much more terrifying than others. But yeah, like I won't get into the figure themselves, but one or two of my favorite novels are by them as well. I really love Denancy Boys, and I feel like that kind of drives it into the more personal realm of like, we see how that affects gods and American Gods, but then being like, coming back to something as simple as whether or not someone is able to pull off a hat all lies in whether or not they believe they can, or whether or not they think they look good in a hat. That's all that really determines whether or not someone actually looks good in a hat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as Esoteria, the Brits really like their occult stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, wild how like all the major British invasion folks brought some piece of that in a major way, but I'm glad they did. I'm all here for it. Like it's kind of why I am.
Yeah, it was like the '90s is when everyone was like, okay, the occult. That's where we're at.
But I hope this answers your source question of, am I a chaos magician? Like,
kinda?
I'm certainly interested in these forms of spiritualism. Like I don't want to take the label necessarily, but like it is something I look into a lot. Like, I think rather than being like an active practitioner as Grant or like as Alan Moore with their own magic system claim to be, like, I do aspire to be something more like Jeff Kripal, who like has had experiences of his own, but he's a professor of religious studies and like comparative religious studies. And he's looking at how these have impacted us through culture. And like, it helps me understand my own experience, kind of what's possible. And I guess if there's something that makes me a chaos magician, it is the application of practices I'm learning from people who take that label or something similar of being an occultist, like Philip H. Farber, who did brain magic recently, which is all about like neuro-linguistic programming, or at least informed by that, and just gives really good meditation exercises that give you a means of like talking with yourself or some emotional part of yourself. And like, it's the first time meditation has made sense in my life. These are practices I do put into use when I'm experiencing big feelings that I haven't been able to put into words. So like, if it acts like a duck in a walks like a duck, then I guess it's a duck. But like, this isn't what I'm gonna write down when the government asks, "What religion are you?" Like, I'm a magician. I'm like, no, that's just the practice that seems coolest to me. If that makes me that, I guess. But I don't
Is
know.
chaos
I'm
magic
not
even a
really.
religion? Like, that's the thing.
I There's no organized body of it, so I'd say it's more a spiritual practice, more a framework than anything. So,
It's like
yeah,
Buddhism.
probably closer to that. It's closer to Buddhism than it is Christianity. I would wager a guess.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I'm actually hoping to have Cody Walker, who was part of kind of like Tim Callahan, who I had on my show a while back. He was part of Saquart, which is a organization that does like critical studies of like popular comics. So they did stuff for the Invisibles and some of Alan Moore's stuff, and they did stuff with superheroes, and they did one for Planetary. Um, um, Cody Walker's the guy who edited the Planetary book. And he's also kind of experimented a lot with like chaos magic. Cause he was telling, because I befriended him recently. He's been telling me about like hyper sigils and stuff like that. So I'll probably ask him about that when I have him on the show, whenever that'll be. Because, well, I was gonna have him before you actually, but he's like, school, because he's a teacher and school's been kind of crazy on my end. I was like, oh well, okay, well we can figure out another time then. So
Yeah, no, the practice of making sigils is like really helpful. There's like, I don't want to say I've done much in the way of a hyper sigil, but as far as sigils are described by Grant and Austin Spare and others, like just taking an idea and abstracting it into like core symbols and consonants and then making an image out of that. That's how you get a logo. That's maybe where one of my logos came from. And like, it gives me something to like work toward or get excited about to bring into reality. Like when I was making my comic, before I got pages adapted, like I was hiring artists online to just draw my characters, so I would be excited enough to want to see these characters put in a comic. So
yeah,
whether or not it's like, oh, by making this sigil, I have sent something out into the universe to make this exist. Maybe it's just I've put something out in my mind to make me excited enough to make this come into existence. But either way, the result I wanted came about because of it. So that's why we say like, yeah, chaos magic is like kind of results based. Like what works for you. So there's not really something you can say that's chaos magic, but this practice isn't, when it is all supposed to be very personal. And I think most spiritual practices would do better if it was all about just one's own personal relationship to these, rather than, I'm not going out there trying to be like, you should try chaos magic. Everyone should go make a sigil tonight. Yeah. Accept sigils into your heart. Like, no, I mean, if
our
if
Lord and
appeals to you,
Savior
do it.
Grant Morrison. He's. I'm kidding.
I didn't say it.
I'm kidding. I'm not saying he's actually Jesus.
Or bigger than him.
Yes.
So he is. He's got Beatles vibe. Like, I know
he likes John
he's
Lennon,
the
if
Beatle
I
once
remember
or twice.
correctly.
Yeah.
That's another one I've seen where him and Gerard Way are talking at like a comic shop, I think.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah. But yeah, no. But yeah, I'm gonna be reading. But going back to Grant Morrison, I will be reading the Doom Patrol soon. I just have to finish Hawkeye first. I'm gonna be doing that tomorrow, so that'll be fun.
Oh yeah, how far into Fractions Hawkeye are you now?
God. The weird thing, because I have. Hold on. I have the omnibus. Because, I just get omnibuses mostly for nowadays. But I'm at issue 13, so, I'll probably just read the rest of the issues. Cause it's only like 22 issues. But yeah, like 6 and 7 are switched, and like 17 is in the middle of the run. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But I'm liking it. It's fun. It's really like... It's really quite good. I often complain about pacing in comic books. Because let me tell you, I've seen comics that go like ultra compressed to the point where it feels like the ideas aren't given space to breathe, and then there's some where it just feels like it's really dragged out. I think Matt Fraction is very good at compressing things, but not in a way where it like loses the emotional moments.
Mm.
I don't know how that's done. I don't. I have written comic scripts, but they haven't really gone anywhere. But he's really good at it. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, like I'm most familiar with Hawkeye and Sex Criminals, and yeah, Sex Criminals especially. Like, I didn't finish the series, but there are moments with those characters that like get you into like what their lived experience is like, or their formative experience that I'll never forget, or like there are moments that still stick out in my mind. So like, yeah, he gets that emotional punch real good.
Sex Criminals is one of the like big Image series. From that part where The Walking Dead and like Invincible came out, and people were like, "Oh, wait a minute, here's this guy from Kentucky or wherever doing this like." Doing comics that aren't like Marvel and DC. Let's go over there and do our own weird stuff over there. It's basically that's when I was growing up in comics. Actually, was when Image was blowing up and putting out all these weird books like Saga and Deadly Class and oh god, what else? Trying to think.
Saga's the series that like people ask me what the best comic is, not favorite, best. Like I usually point them towards Saga as far as like a series of more than 50 issues, kind of contemporary, like, so not putting it in the same class as like your Watchmen or Mouse, but like what's the best ongoing comic series that's also accessible to new readers? Like Saga 100%. Like I try to reread the series every time a new volume comes out, and it always feels really rewarding. And I just love bringing people into it that otherwise aren't into comics. Like it's so good.
Yeah, Saga's great. I'm the same way. I'm like, if you ever read one comic in your lifetime, Saga should be the one, because it's like, you don't need to know anything. You don't need to know these particular tropes. You can just read the first issue, and if you're not sucked in, forget it. But I don't see how I've only met maybe one or two people who didn't like Saga. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. Oh yeah, kind of rewinding back to the Hawkeye omnibus though. Like, I feel like with modern comics, especially, they've really struggled with like translating the experience of like, okay, well, appealing to month comic readers and then like trade waiters and like omnibus collectors, and I think that sucks. Like in my big pull list days where I was really keeping up with things as they came out, like their month series experiences that people just won't really get to experience. Like for me personally, it was Ryan Parrott's run on the Power Rangers comics, where like one series was in like the current day and the other was like a year ago, but there was so much context given of like, oh, we're reading this issue, seeing these things set up in this issue where we see them pay off. Whereas now it's like, well, they're collected as two different series. You have to find an online list and like hop back and forth, and just that experience isn't translated to folks. And I don't know if we really have a solution for that, but I think just with where the comics market is and how they have to appeal to multiple audiences, but especially keep getting month-to-month readers so a book can last long enough to get a trade, like it puts us in a sticky situation. And I really hope, I think the ultimate solution is for comic publishers to give people more time before canceling a book.
Yeah, no, I've seen a bunch of videos online about what's wrong with comics, and I think a lot. I'll just say this: a lot of them make me kind of annoyed, and also some of them I'm like, guys, you do know that Image Comics and like Dark Horse, these other companies exist that aren't Marvel and D. I do that. Yeah. I'm often exasperated about that, but I don't know if you ever watched Professor Thorgy. He doesn't do comic book content anymore, which makes me really sad because, man, he was great. But he probably did the best, like, what is wrong with comics, like Marvel DC wise, with comic. I don't know. I know that's not what you were talking about specifically, but I always thought this is the one that most resonated with me.
Yeah, I mean, it does certainly apply to Marvel and DC as well, and like in this case, some of their best comics, like Hawkeye. Like, I didn't love that, save for the trades, it does split up every other issue of like, okay, one trade will be like issues 8, 12, and 14, or like these are the issues following Kate, these are the issues following Clint. And I feel like I would have been more on the edge of my seat if I had that time to wait between them, or like if this were like a book where we switch characters chapter to chapter. So yeah, it affects Marvel and DC, but whatever's going to fix comics, it has to fix more than just Marvel and DC.
Yeah, or people saying like SJWs. I'm like, I don't give a crap. I'm so freaking tired of that. Like,
Oh yeah, no, cultures. I like to think cultures moved on, but I know there's
one,
still
I think the whole progressive pandering that some of these people were complaining about years ago, I think that kind of died out. But at the same time, like if you didn't gather that, like progressive people were doing comics and tends to attract progressive people, like Captain America literally punched Adolf Hitler in the face. Like it's like one of the most infamous comic images of all time. Like if that offends you, I don't know what to tell you.
yeah, and ultimately like n- the thing ruining comics is never going to be one particular audience specifically, like especially when there's like different comics appeal to different people. Like that's like me blaming the webtoon audience for killing
Exactly. Yeah.
comics. I'm like, no, webtoon people don't, for the most part, go to like brick and mortar comic shops and buy monthly issues. Like some of the people I've had on my show that are comic writers or artists have talked about, like, yeah, all of my stuff is free online, and then I do these physical trades, and it's maybe available in one or two other routes. And these intersections don't cross over. Like I'm not losing graphic novel sales to people that read my comic online, because web comic readers and graphic novel readers are just very different in how they want to consume their comics. So saying like, oh, people who want progressive values in their comics are ruining comics, or even conversely, like, oh, the Comicsgate people are ruining comics. I'm like, I don't think either of them are ruining it. I think they just appeal to two different fan bases, and ultimately, like, it's up to the publishers like who they make stuff for, and then there's any number of independent creators that'll always be making stuff for people like them. Like my favorite publisher of recent years, or at least when I started Transcending Comics, was Silver Sprocket, who like just does a lot of interesting, weird, queer comics for the most part, and they're
Hmm.
not like comics I read elsewhere. I need to catch up on some of their stuff, but
I mean, I'm not
like,
even heard of this, so I don't.
oh yeah, like
Then
if
again,
there's one,
I'm not like plugged into like LGBT related stuff, so hopefully
yeah,
you won't blame me too much for that.
no, that's part of my show that I've like gotta be. And that's a big part of the reason I know about them, was like the first comic I covered on Transcending Comics was from them. And like thankfully I just have a really cool local comic shop that carries some indie, like smaller than Image Dark Horse indie kind of comics, and they carried them. But I will plug, like, whether or not you're into like LGBT storytelling, check out the comic of Thunder and Lightning by Kim Wong. It's
I
like
think I've seen
90
you
pages
talk about that
long.
on Blue Sky. So
Yeah, yeah, it's an incredible graphic novel, and like has really shaped the way I approach, like, I have really big ideas. That doesn't mean I need a 300 plus page epic. Like you can put an anime worth of storytelling into a 90-page graphic novel somehow. Kim has figured it out. I'm not there yet, but I'm not an artist, so it's hard for me to produce 90 pages of anything.
yeah, I thought what was interesting about kind of going back to I read your comic When We Transform. I thought it was, and you can feel free to let me know if this was just subconscious or if you were intending this, but I kind of liked how the keeping the superhero identity secret was kind of analogous to, keeping like a trans identity secret.
Yeah, yeah, like I wanted to play with like both allegory and like a literal trans identity at the same time, or like
Mm-hmm.
how one kind of informs the other, or living two different kinds of a double life. And frankly, some of it was just me wanting to tell the kind of trans superhero story I wasn't yet seeing elsewhere. Um, and like, there's still more of that to come. Like, I still want to tell the story of just like we naturally see someone hit that point after a certain amount of time in a series. But just letting someone come out to a parent and it be the best case scenario, like I was lucky to have a mom who handled my coming out like exceptionally well. So I wanted to give that to my readers rather than yet another horror story about it, or like, oh, this person comes out and they're shunned. Like, no, I want it to be a beautiful moment, as it often does get to be for people. And for those it doesn't get to be a beautiful moment, at least they can have this in a comic. And for those considering whether or not to come out, I don't want to put in their head a narrative of like, and then you get in a fight with your parents, or and then your friends turn their back on you. I wanted them to see like this can and often does go well, or it can be a great change to someone's life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was gonna say something, but the words weren't coming. So there you go. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't mind any kind of story as long as it's done well. So I mean, that might be kind of a cop out answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah. If there's one apology I have about When We Transform, it's that there isn't more of it. I feel bad that it's been close to a year
Yeah,
and a
no, I'm
half.
like, yo, this is a good idea. I think you could expand on this a little bit. There's some cool ideas in there.
I have 3 or 4 chapters of a webtoon that I made that like continues it. It's not on webtoon. I have weird feelings about that platform, so I don't know if it'll go there. But like, I kind of needed to evolve as a writer a bit, because like if I made another issue, I want to be confident it's better than the previous issue. And I think I needed to change the framing device, because like, yeah, my goal was to start at the beginning and work up to this person's transition. However, like, I needed to have the realization that like time travel is a big part of issue 0. I know a time skip is something I work into, but
yeah,
like,
I did kind of. Dana does kind of just show up like, hey, I know it was kind of like a thought form just showed up like, hello, how are you? You know, like, which I imagine, you know, there were reasons, and you know.
So like, if I just start at the beginning of this character's adventures in the 90s, like for a long time, my comic would just be store brand Power Rangers, and I don't want that. What makes mine different is that it's a story told across time, or like multiple periods of this person in their life and transition. So like, finding a way to frame this, or like create a good framing device of how can I show where this character is now, how can I show where this character is in the 90s, and at what point do I want to introduce their like self that's already started transitioning. So that should be coming. We're really hoping by like fall 2026 to have issue 1 Kickstarter. My collaborator is going to have also like a full-size story in it, so it'll be a double-sized issue. So now it's just a matter of me figuring out how to rework what I've adapted so far into something better. But like, the big holdup, or like why there isn't more, is I can't draw. I have to pay people online to draw my scripts, and that costs a good amount of money. And I've had some ventures and distractions along the way, like with my color changing art stuff. I was like, wait, I only make like $1 to $6 for every comic I sell, depending on if it's a variant and stuff. Really hard to make your money back at a con like this. Way easier to make your money back at a con selling art prints, which again, I can't make, but I can bring something unique that convention people haven't seen before that they'll still want to get, and like have an art collective that I'm supporting. Which it's worked okay, but it is still really hard to make back convention money. So that's not worked as well as I had hoped. And I'm still kind of figuring out how I want to do this. I do want to keep working with light reactive comics. But like, I need to put out more When We Transform. I just don't want it to be like corrupted by like too much of a publisher's influence, right? It needs to be creator owned. And like, it needs to be the baby that me and Jason Bryant have been creating for over 4 or 5 years now. So like, these things take time, and I'd rather be slow to create a good comic than quick to make an okay comic.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, yeah, it's yeah. Here we go. My words aren't coming again.
You mentioned that you've made a couple comic scripts yourself. Is that something you look to keep pursuing at all?
I mean, I would love to work in comics. I mean, I know people who are. I mean, you know, I've met you. I know other people who've done comics, but I it's definitely something I would like to build towards rather than because like I try to I fancy myself as a very practical person, so I wrote a novel. I'm still working on it, but it's I'm like that's what I can do right now. I mean, I definitely would love to work in comics though.
Hmm.
Maybe not like Marvel. I don't know what I would do for Marvel or DC or anything like that, or but if I ever could like work with Image or something, I would be like, oh my god, I love Invincible.
Yeah. Like it's tough when the people I've
Or just do it
interviewed that I'm like,
myself. I don't know. I'm not, I don't want to be like, I know like doing it yourself's kind of a thing now. You can do that.
hmm. Yeah. And frankly, if ever there's a time to put out like flawed art to bring your ideas to life, it's now because like at least people will know it's not generative AI making it. Like if any Gen AI is like it kind of gives us permission to make flawed and or bad art because at least then you know it comes from a human. So like
Yeah.
yeah, rather than stooping to use it as a tool like some schlub, like no, just make it. It's okay if it looks bad. That can be your style, and then it can keep looking better over time. Like look at the guy that made One Punch Man. That worked out pretty well for him.
Well, I was gonna say I'm kind of the Tom King type where I just draw stick figures and be like, here you go, kid.
Yeah. Hey, there are many a web comic artist that's worked out just fine for.
Yeah, no, it's a thing. That's interesting though. You're reading Multiversity because like one of my things for my Morrison-a-thon is I didn't want I wanted to read like some of the big stuff. Like I wanted to reread the Invisibles and read like Doom Patrol and Animal Man. Some of the other stuff he's done. I'm blanking at the I'm blanking on some of
Yeah.
them.
Klaus, the Filth.
I do want to read The Filth at some point. I'm probably going to read that at the same time I'm doing The Invisibles because I know it's kind of like a spiritual successor slash.
Yeah. And you've done a great job, like going for some of the deeper cuts that even I haven't read. Like I was just watching your Joe the Barbarian review.
Oh yeah,
Uh, I've started We 3, but haven't finished it. It's kind of my travel book because I got the new like compact edition of it. Kill Your Boyfriend, I still haven't gotten to. So like, I'm glad to see someone talking about those books because there's a million people talking about new X-Men and their Justice League or Batman runs, but like, say when I interviewed Grant, I kept the focus on the Invisibles because one, it helped me focus my questions, of which I had many, but also because like any comics YouTuber or podcaster can ask Grant about All-Star Superman, but I
I
don't think
probably would
many.
ask him about it if I had him on my show. I would probably ask him about All Star Superman. But
Yeah.
I would love to see him talk like about like Animal Man because like I think there's
Mm.
a lot of stuff in that animal. You mentioned he me and Tim Callahan were talking about how he's generally like a compressed writer. He tries to put a lot into not so much. But I was really impressed with how much he put into those 26 issues. Like a lesser writer might have taken 50 to get to the point where like Buddy was like, I can see you, like that infamous panel.
Mm. Yeah, and that's just been part of Grant's DNA all along. Like Zenith very quickly gets to like multi-dimensional stuff or playing with like characters that grow as big as the universe or become a universe in themselves. And I know they talk about Captain Clyde and Super Gods and like how that
Oh
also
yeah.
quickly went through like yeah, he's got his evil doppelganger, or he ascends or comes back from death, or just like there's multiversal stuff,
Yeah,
and
I
just
mean,
like he gets the tropes and hits them all.
and also a lot of my like favorite like comics, at least Marvel and DC wise, at least nowadays. I mean, I love Batman a lot, but like it's often when the people like take like a Grant Morrison and go like, here's just like lesser known character. We don't really know what to do with them. Have some fun with it, and then he does something like Animal Man, where it's like, whoa, he's like literally meeting the creators of the comic book.
Hmm.
Like that fascinates me. I'm really fascinated with that kind of maybe not necessarily deconstruction, but reinvention. You know.
Hmm. Do you have a character like that you would want to be the one to like make like a Tom King or like Grant Morrison Animal Man reinvention of it?
Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about maybe doing an Animal Man because I saw the meta stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I could play with that. Even though I think meta stuff can get kind of gimmicky, like with Deadpool, which sorry,
Mm.
Deadpool,
Mhm.
but you know, but I don't know. It would be I'd have to really scrounge through DC or Marvel lore. More of a DC guy
Yeah.
anyway, because I think they just I don't know they have the better. I prefer them. We'll just say.
I won't share my ideas on air lest I be lucky enough to get the call from a publisher someday, but I will at least say the characters like um the version of Omek from the new 52
Yeah,
is
Jack
like,
Kirby character.
yeah, originally a Jack Kirby character. He's been reinvented a number of times as like, I don't know, various kinds of robot, but in the new 52 he was just like this kind of bland Asian Hulk that was very like they were clearly trying to do Jack Kirby style comics, but in 2011, and it had its moments. I was at one point doing a new 52 podcast, and we like it was our least favorite book that we covered, but that character has stuck with us ever since, and we want more than anything to like do something with that character someday and that specific version of him. And I feel a similar way about the Atom. Uh,
Mm.
I do love a character that you can feasibly read all of their appearances within a month. But I think there's a lot of interesting ideas with the Atom. And now that I know a thing or two about the publishing history of them and the inspiration behind that, I think there's some really cool meta stuff that I would love to do someday. But
Yeah,
like,
like if I could get like maybe I could do something with like because I know like the League of Superheroes are like a thing. I've thought maybe I could do something with that because I know like Keith Giffen did a run on League of Super. I haven't read it yet, but you know.
oh yeah, the Legion, yeah.
Oh, the League. Did
Yeah.
I say the League of Superheroes? What am I talking about? Where's my mind at today? I thought like, yeah, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I would love to do something like that. I don't know who I would do it with though.
Mm. Yeah, Legion, there's so much you can do there. And like also a type of Superman story you can do with the Legion that you can't really on their own. So yeah, that's another one I'd have a lot of fun with. I don't know if I'd be the right person because I've not read that many Legion comics, though they were one of the first two comics I ever received. But yeah, there's just so much lore and history there, and the people that write it are clearly fans of like fans of it going back to its origins. And I'm like, that's not me. I look at any appearance of them, and I don't know who hardly any of these characters are, but I love what they can do from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah, no, it's like yeah. I mean, it's funny. I think someone. I think it was actually Robert Kirkman who was like, if you want to do your big masterpiece, just do it with your own characters. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, and I know people kind of doing that.
And it's like,
Uh,
yeah, there's people doing that. So it's not. But my
yeah.
short answer is yes. I would love to work in comics at some point. I don't know what I would do though.
Hmm. Yeah, like for me, the dream, since when I look at people that I want to be in 3 to 5 years or be where they are, a lot of them have full time jobs still and are working on comics on the side. So, like, for me, the dream would be to keep podcasting, like, in a further professional role, like getting actively paid by multiple people or like a podcast organization. So I still get like, I'm very extroverted. I need this social energy and like, I need to be exposed to new ways to see the world, new experiences, and then also write comics that are then informed by the people I meet and these experiences. So like I'm doing what I love for free right now, and I'm really hoping within 1 to 3 years I can turn this into my full-time job.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I've done a lot of these shows myself. My parents are like, "Oh, dude, don't you want to do it as like a job?" And I'm like, "That would be a fun job for sure. I wouldn't mind doing it as a job. I don't know. It's just kind of I don't know. I like where I'm at now. Is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Haven't been
Yeah,
able to convey that very well to them, but that's kind of where my thought process is.
no, that was a big draw for me coming on your show though, just seeing how long you've been at it with this, and also like I like the mix of novels and books with your comics coverage. So,
Yeah,
all right.
I don't. I mean, I've had a couple people who work in comics on the show, and I definitely would love to have more because actually, funnily enough, I tried to ask Tony Harris, who drew like Starman and Ex Machina.
Hmm.
I tried to ask him because we were friends on Facebook. He never got back to me. And also, he's kind of an
Hmm.
asshole, so I didn't really. I didn't. So I'm probably not going to have him on anyway because I got tired of seeing him rant on Facebook about just. I just unfriended him quietly and moved on with my life. But I did ask
Hmm.
Russ Braun the other day if he wanted to come on. He's done some stuff like he's done a lot of work with like Garth Ennis. So
Hmm. Yeah. Like there's a lot of people that are always looking to promote their stuff. I'd keep a special eye on people that are like doing Kickstarter campaigns in the near future. Like you meet really cool creatives that way, and read books you might not otherwise have come across. And like those folks are almost always down to talk about their work and promote it. So I'd say like keep an eye out on the real indie people and the like first time or third time comic creators. And yeah, you'll get a really good success rate of people who are excited to come on your show and talk about their stuff.
yeah, no, it's funny. I'm really awful keeping up with like the super indie people because well, for one, I don't really know a lot of them, but also there's times where like someone will follow me and I'll be like, oh, they do art, that's cool, and then they'll try to like shill their art to me, and I'm like, dude, like I'm just chilling over here. Like, can we get to like have a drink first or do a show before we you start shilling your stuff to me? I don't know, but
Yeah. No, I get those now and then, often from people with a real weird craft. Like, I think it was someone that wanted to offer me like a 3D etching. I don't know, some kind of like carving or 3D printed figurine of one of my characters, and like would not take no for an answer. But how cool would it be to have one of your characters have one of these? I'm like, kinda cool. Yes. Please stop showing your craft to me. Like, I'm not looking for like you're not even a comic artist. This isn't what I need right now.
yeah, but that's yeah, it's just yeah. I mean, you're talking about like Grant Morrison. You've been kind of doing you read Zenith. Are you reading anything else at the moment, or are you just kind of like just keeping yourself busy with like the podcast and stuff?
Let's see. I recently read Maru Kiru Destroy the Moon for an upcoming episode of Giant Size Violence. That's another indie book, but like really cool one that's kind of like neon colored, female led Conan the Barbarian. Real
You
cool.
like a lot
Would
of
recommend that.
neon stuff from the sounds of it.
Yeah, I like bright colors. Let's see. I'm trying to think what else I've been reading recently. Um,
Have you read Do a Power Bomb by any chance?
I haven't, but I really need to check out more of that one's Daniel Warren Johnson,
Yeah,
right?
I just read it the other night and it was awesome. I'm not even
Yeah.
into like pro wrestling and it was dope. It was really
See,
cool.
I've been trying to catch up on the Power Rangers comics.
Mm.
Um, let's see, there was finally a webtoon.
I was gonna ask you about Power Rangers as well because I've never I actually met one of them a few years ago at a con, but I don't remember which one it was. Um, but like it's one of those. It's kind of like with like anime or like certain anime or manga. Like I've never gotten the Power Rangers. Was it just like something you grew up with?
Yeah, something I very much grew up with from like literally the age of 1. So like it's just very much in my bones, my love for Power Rangers. Um, it's something that I'm like, okay, there are comics I can absolutely recommend to you for like trying to get into this as an adult without that kind of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really do that with the show. There is other stuff from Japan though that's like uh, very closely related to it that I'm like, this is awesome. Like, okay, if you like John Carpenter movies, watch this. If you're looking for The Boys, but with tokusatsu or fancy Power Ranger looking suits, watch this one. Like, that's what my podcast Giant Size Violence is kind of all about. Is like I found Ultra Mega, which is maybe an all-time favorite comic of mine that was like R-rated Power Rangers with Hellboy vibes and like a little bit of a manga visual flair
I
to it.
do enjoy me some Hellboy. So
Yeah. And like ever since I found that, I've wanted to like help people find their own version of that. Or like, oh, hey, Japanese heroes have a bunch of really cool stuff that appeal to all kinds of superhero fans.
Well, though
And
it's
yeah,
funny because like it's funny. I didn't like read. There are anime that I like, by the way, but I tend to like, I guess, I don't know. I don't know. What manga have I read? Okay, I've read Berserk, which I think is like the single like darkest piece of sequential art I've ever read. I've read Monster and Pluto, which I love those. I'm like, yo, if you could show like more manga like that where the figures look distinct but they look like people and it's not just like, that's always why I've been hesitant to jump into the One Piece, because I love cartoony simple art, but there's sometimes where it feels like it's like bouncing off the page. I don't know. I don't know if you're a manga aficionado at all, but
not an aficionado, but like there are definitely manga I've picked up and enjoyed. Certainly the case with anime. Like I really love me some Evangelion. Um,
everyone freaking loves Evangelion. I've never watched Evangelion.
oh, girl, you're missing out. You gotta you gotta get on that train. Um, let's see. Right now, I'm listening to Braiding Sweetgrass, which is nonfiction, but just kind of about like our relationship to the environment.
Oh,
Kind of something I'm doing in a book club of sorts with Arden, but it's one of my partner's favorite books, so got that going for me. Um, I don't physically read a lot, or at least I pretty much never do with novels. But like as far as physical books go, there's some like magic adjacent or occult adjacent texts I'm reading. Also, generally just the work of Jeff Kripal. Like this is the Superhumanities by them, and like if I'm gonna physically sit down and read something that doesn't have pictures like a comic, I want to be learning something from it.
that's fair.
So
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
like
I'm actually on my Discord. Maybe you've seen me talk about it on Blue Sky, but I'm actually going to be doing a reread of the Odyssey soon, so that'll be fun.
cool. Yeah, like I've got audiobooks. If I want a novel, I might as well just do the audiobook.
Yeah, I've been experimenting with audiobooks because I'm one of those like old. I sometimes joke with my friends. I'm just a cranky old man in this 25-year-old man's body, but I like to physically read. But I have been experimenting with audiobooks recently, and I read a book called A Rage in Harlem recently, which actually has to do with drag. There's people who dress up in drag in that book, and it's in it was a really interesting book. It was a really good book, but
All right,
um
I've got 3 recommendations for you for like your audio list book
I
journey.
liked the book, and it was read by Samuel L. Jackson, which is a plus. So there you
Rad.
go.
Okay, World War Z is one of like best produced audiobooks of all time. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how it stands reading it physically, but the audiobook, impeccable. Uh, like Mark Hamill and a number of other celebrity voices
Oh
are on it.
man,
They do a great job. Also, there's a few with full audio casts that are just wonderful. Uh, like Orson Scott Card, screw the guy's politics, but like,
I had a
uh,
friend recently who just talked to him on his channel because he read one of his non-Ender's Game books. It's called Alvin Maker, which actually
mm,
I don't really care for Orson Scott Card as a writer personally, but it was
but
fun that he got him on there though. It's like,
he
oh, look at you.
really puts work into his audiobooks because he's very much into like spoken word storytelling. So like all the Ender's Game books, you can find a full audio cast version of those that's super worth it. And same goes for Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book, which might be my
Oh,
personal favorite audiobook. I'm sorry. But
hey, you
yeah, the
love what you love, man. I'm not.
full audio cast version is just a beautiful experience. So
He
like
did one for the Sandman a few years ago, and I'm just like,
mm,
it's a comic though.
it's good. I listened to it when it came out the first
This one-
season.
it's like my friend Joe Byrne. I think you would like this. His Hybrid Helix books, which he does have 5 of the audiobooks out. I think 7 of them out right now. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. Um, but it was kind of weird at first because it's about superheroes and it's a novel. It's not like a book or it's not a comic. So it was kind of weird for me, kind of going like, okay, this isn't a comic. They don't have images, unfortunately, but it's really good though. If you like Invincible, which he was very deeply inspired by, it's a good one to read. It's a good one to complement Invincible. But
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually in the letters column of one of the last Invisibles or Invincible
oh
issues.
yeah, that's interesting. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's so cool. I have the. I'm sure you saw it, but I have the 3
Yeah,
bubble
I can
books
see
back
those
there.
back there. And is that east of west next to it? I've been trying to make out what the black and white one is this
Yes,
whole
that is
time.
East of West. I'm gonna be reading that in like June, so that should be fun. I read the first arc last year because I was gonna, give it to a thrift store because support your local half price books. I don't know if they have that in Iowa.
Yeah, we got that.
Um, but yeah, so I just grabbed the. I've been getting into Omni collecting recently. It's funny because my friend Shay and I have been complaining about how bad the Marvel Omnis have been recently. Just how bad they've been at putting them out is what I mean. Not the Omnis themselves. It is insane. I mean, I don't want to get into a rant, but
Yeah, I've been
I've been
hearing
I've
things
been I've been
about
trying
their
to dodge
physical
ranting
publishing
this
quality.
evening because again,
Appreciate it.
my dad's doing his AI thing. And I'm sure either A, you'll probably aren't interested in hearing what I'm ranting about, or B, you'll be like, yeah, you know what, this guy's got a point.
Yeah, chances are, like, I mean, I talk comics with my best friend at least once or twice a week, so like, this is well trodden ground for the conversations I'm having on a regular basis. But yeah, I feel you on that front. Uh, but yeah, I'm trying to think any other major comics folks like the Rachel Pollack Doom Patrol deep dive. It's got to be coming soon. Um, and just reading a lot more for the podcast. Like that's why I was really looking for these excuses to read Grant's work because so often I'm caught up in like when I have a guest on, I try to read almost everything they've done if that's possible, or at least a very representative like cut of what they've done, which with Grant not possible. But a lot of my indie creators that I have on that have only published like less than 12 comics, I can read everything they've made so far and be very knowledgeable when they come on. And they seem to really appreciate that. So I have a few people that I have lined up. Probably one of the ones I'm most excited to have some time on in the next year is Xander Cannon, who wrote Kaiju Max.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that guy's name before.
Yeah, the incredible prison drama about giant monsters and like Godzilla pastiches. But found an old out of print comic of his, The Replacement God.
Oh, I think he worked with I think he worked on Top 10 actually with
He did. I think he was a colorist or a letterer on that.
something
But
like that. I don't remember, but he worked on that.
yeah. But I should probably get wrapping up here. But
yeah, I was
is
about to say
there
we've been going
any
on for a
final questions
while,
before
and
we
I
go?
actually need to go to the bathroom like really bad. So for like the past like 30 minutes. So, but yes,
Well, I appreciate you holding it out for me.
that was probably too much information. I apologize. But thank you so much, Tommy, for coming on here. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure during this Morrison-a-thon I will scheme to have you on again. So.
All right. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me towards the end of Morrison-a-thon. I can hear your thoughts after a year of it. And yeah, happy to come back. Thanks for having me, Britton. This was great.
Yeah, but if you have as I like to do before the end of these things, if you have any social media, you can feel free to share it.
Yeah. If you want to check out what I was talking about with the color changing art, you can find me on Instagram under the name Keymaster Collective, or just search Tomi Trembath. I'll come up. That's Tomi. Blue Sky is where I'm most active, but I just don't like posting on social media all that much. But you can follow me on Blue Sky. That's kind of best. I kind of on Facebook. If you're on Twitter, maybe stop being on Twitter. I do technically have accounts on there, but only to post when I have an episode. But guys, stop giving Elon Musk your attention and money. Don't feed that machine. Please get off of Twitter if you can. But that's my last little rant there. But yeah, follow me. Yeah, support my art on Instagram. And if anyone out there wants to try their hand at making color changing art, please reach out to me. I've put together a guide full of resources. I might not be able to draw, but I can document things and point you to people who can. And it's an art style I really want to see take off in the realm of comics and other nerd spaces.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, thank you for coming on and hanging out for a bit. well, until I have you on whatever again at some point. I'm sure we'll keep
Yeah.
talking on Blue Sky.
Oh, and if I can plug just my stuff of where to find me creatively, because I'm more likely to make things, real quick, I have my 2 podcasts, Transcending Comics and Giant Size Violence, Toku Comics podcast. If you want things that look like Godzilla or Power Rangers, follow me on that one. I produce the Repatterning podcast with Arden Lee, and I make an appearance on every episode. So if you're looking for more cerebral, spiritual, mental health type of podcast, find me there. And launching probably by the end of the summer, I have a music podcast coming out called Vision in the Void, supporting my favorite indie musician, Ancient Summer, who has incredible work that I want to help share with the world. If you liked my episode, It's Morphin Time. This is me flexing my ability to incorporate music in a podcast even more. So check us out when that launches later this summer.
All right. Well, I mean, that's really all I have to say for this evening. Hopefully hopefully you guys enjoyed this conversation. I definitely did. It was well worth the wait. Again, Tommy, we should do this again at some point.
Yeah, happy to. But thanks again, and have a lovely night, everyone.
All right, take care, everyone.